Hello there. For all my wanderers, beholders of curiosities or otherwise ghoulish fiends, take heed, and consider this a prelude, a warning, perhaps, before you choose to inquire thus further, as we venture into the world of horror, a world that is not as far or as different from ours as we like to think. A world that might never be understood and perhaps shouldn't be. Come and uncover with me tales of dread, chronicles of the uncanny, explorations into the strange and scary, and for all the things that go bump in the night. I am Vervaina Grimm, and this is Behind the Button Eye. Today, we are traveling through another dimension. One in which you have probably seen before, but hopefully for your sake have never actually been a part of. Here, we embark to the Twilight Zone for a special encounter. Nothing in the Dark, episode 81 or episode 16 of season 3, aired on January 6, 1962. The story centers around an elderly woman, Wanda Dunn, who lives in a basement apartment of an otherwise abandoned building. She hears a brawl outside and someone crying out for help. Reluctantly, she looks out and sees a police officer, Harold Belden, who had just been shot. She makes it clear that she doesn't want to let him inside because she believes he could be death in disguise. He pleads for her help, and despite her original resistance, she ultimately relents and helps him inside. Once inside her home, she explains to him that she didn't want to help because she has come across death in different forms many times throughout her life. Out of utter fear of death coming after her, she has spent many years of her life inside. Someone knocks on the door and the young man tries to persuade Wanda to open it, but she refuses. Instead, that said someone forces the door open, causing Wanda to lose consciousness from the fear.
Dead body!
Turns out it's a building contractor who is assigned to demolish the building in an hour, and that she needs to leave, otherwise he'll have the authorities remove her. Wanda tries to get Harold to help her, but it appears that she's talking to no one. When the contractor leaves, Wanda looks in a mirror and does not see Harold. Horrified, it finally hits her. Harold was Death himself. Harold, or in actuality, Death, tries to explain to her that he wasn't trying to trick her, but did this to prove that she shouldn't be afraid of him. He eventually convinces her to give him her hand, and then comes to see that she's standing beside her own dead body. The episode ends with the pair walking arm in arm outside into the sunlight. Lamont Johnson was the director of this episode. He was born September 30th, 1922, and passed away on October 24th, 2010. He was best known as an actor and film director and won 2 Emmy Awards during his career. Including Nothing in the Dark, he actually directed 8 Twilight Zone episodes in total: The Shelter, 5 Characters in Search of an Exit, One More Pallbearer, Kick the Can, 4 O'Clock, Hocus Pocus and Frisbee, and Passage on the Lady Anne. This episode included 2 writers, George Clayton Johnson and Rod Serling, who I'll cover more in depth in a different video. George Clayton Johnson was born July 10, 1929, and passed away December 25, 2015. He was a prolific science fiction writer and wrote scripts for The Twilight Zone and the first telecast episode of Star Trek, The Man Trap. He also was involved in Twilight Zone, the movie. Regarding The Twilight Zone, he was involved in the episodes The Four of Us Are Dying, Execution, The Prime Mover, which he is unaccredited for, and 90 Years Without Slumbering. He also did the teleplays for A Penny for Your Thoughts, A Game of Pool, and Kick the Can. According to his IMDb page, he was a huge advocate for the legalization of marijuana and apparently was known for smoking all day, every day, even until he was in his 80s. All I can say is, He sounds pretty cool. There are 3 main stars featured in this episode. Gladys Cooper, or I should say Dame Gladys Cooper, plays the old woman Wanda in this episode. She was born on December 18th, 1888, and passed away November 17th, 1971. Her career spanned across 7 decades on stage, in films, and on television. Nothing in the Dark was actually the first Twilight Zone episode she appeared in. She would also go on to appear in Season 4, Episode 17, Passage on the Lady Anne, and Season 5, Episode 19, Night Call. Next is the one who most people will recognize, even if it's just by name alone. Robert Redford plays the young police officer, Harold Belden, or more affectionately and accurately, Mr. Death. He was born August 18th, 1936, and is currently 88 years old at the date of this video's release. Nothing in the Dark was the only Twilight Zone episode he appeared in. In fact, it was one of the first things he acted in before becoming a household name. He had an appearance on Alfred Hitchcock Presents only a year prior in 1961. Lastly is R.G. Armstrong, who plays the contractor in this episode. He was born April 7th, 1917, and passed away July 27th, 2012. He was best known for westerns and had a 40-year-long career as both an actor and playwright. Fearing death is pretty common. It probably won't come as a shock to any of you that many consider it to be a universal fear or plainly just part of the human experience. But why? To put it bluntly, I think we'd all be already 6 feet under before we even got close to examining all the reasons or possible theories. However, I don't think that's grounds for giving up on the discussion entirely. Quite the opposite, in fact. At some point or another, we all fear death. Some fear it their entire lives, literally, while others might fear it for most or only some. At the very least, I think it's safe to assume that everyone does at some point, no matter if you'd consider it small or fleeting. Given that we are all going to die at some point, death anxiety is a normal part of the human experience. For many of us, thinking about death can invoke fears of separation, loss, pain, suffering, and anxiety about leaving those we love behind. This normal fear isn't necessarily a bad thing either. The article goes on to bring up terror management theory, which suggests that the power of the fear can be substantial or impactful enough to motivate one to live their life to the fullest, to have more experiences, fulfill one's ambitions, and value the little moments more. However, this normal fear can rather easily become a bad thing. When this fear becomes distressing or starts negatively impacting one's life, much like what we see with Wanda in the episode, then it's unhealthy and harmful. The fear of anything can become that intense to someone. But I think that level of fear when it comes to death is easier for people to understand since many people have some sort of fear of death. Many fear the before part of death, the dying part. As peaceful as death in of itself can be, the process of dying is typically not as likely to be. Whether that's due to disease or illness, accident or incident, or even just the natural process of aging, I think it's more than understandable to fear any level of suffering. A rather substantial, to put it mildly, part of death is the unknown. Who's to say what happens when we die? Many people have their own theories or beliefs, whether it's spiritual, such as believing there's an afterlife or reincarnation. And that's even before going into what an afterlife looks like. Is there heaven? Is my heaven the same as yours? Is there hell? Is it like Dante's Inferno or the hell from Norse mythology? Is there a limbo? Or is it purgatory? Does that contain nothingness? Being internally bored? Maybe being a ghost, or perhaps doing the same thing over and over again for eternity? Or is what happens after something no one has even thought of before? Or what of the other option that some others believe? What if there is nothing? That when you die, that's it. You cease to exist completely. No ifs, ands, or buts. What would that even be like? Could you even imagine it? The answer is you really can't. Once you try to think of what nothingness would look like, you fill it with something. You can't really picture what being non existent is like because, well, you do exist and you're conscious of it. People fear the unknown. And death is the unknown. And regardless if you believe in an afterlife or anything of the like, when you die, your existence here on Earth, the way that you are here, becomes non existent. Even if you are reincarnated as something or someone else, it's not who you are or the form you are in right now. Your life, whatever it is or looks like, ends. We tend to fear what we don't understand. And more so, how terrifying is something that you know you can't ever fully, really understand. Or maybe we have to choose to be okay with not understanding, with not knowing. The overall idea of fearing death is definitely not a new topic, to put it lightly. To fear death is nothing other than to think oneself wise when one is not. For it is to think one knows what one does not know. No man knows whether death may not even turn out to be the greatest blessing for a human being. And yet, people fear it as if they knew for certain that it is the greatest of evil. Death is more often than not portrayed to be the bad guy, as Billie Eilish might put it, or as Socrates said, seen as the greatest of evil. Like, let's be frank, the imagery of the Grim Reaper doesn't exactly make one feel all warm and fuzzy looking at it.
It's okay. No, it's not ominous at all. No.
But in all seriousness, it isn't exactly surprising, but still intriguing how commonplace this characterization of death is. It's one thing to fear death, to fear the unknown, but I don't think it's fair then to demonize it, to dress it up as this monster. Where there is life, there is death, and regardless of how you feel about it, it's just that. I think the ending of the story conveys what I'm trying to say best.
But I had to make you understand. Am I really so bad? Am I really so frightening? You've talked to me? You've confided in me? Have I tried to hurt you? It isn't me you're afraid of. You understand me. What you're afraid of is the unknown. Don't be afraid.
But I am afraid.
The running's over. It's time to rest. Give me your hand.
But I don't want to die.
Trust me.
No. No.
Mother. Give me your hand. You see? No shock. No engulfment. No tearing asunder. What you feared would come like an explosion is like a whisper. What you thought was the end, the beginning.
When will it happen? When will we go?
Go. Look. We have already begun.
I think this whole episode really plays on the theme of death being more like a friend than a foe. Regarding the end scene in particular, it reminded me of a poem by Emily Dickinson. Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carrot held but just ourselves in immortality. What a truly ingenious yet simplistic sentiment. As we can personify death to be this evil lurking monster, we could also personify it to be like an old friend, an acquaintance, a certainty where, yes, is scary, but is really one of the only certainties to life. Two Mark Twain quotes about death come to mind, one in which he uses adjectives that don't tend to be linked with death. But death was sweet, death was gentle, death was kind. Death healed the bruised spirit and the broken heart, and gave them rest and forgetfulness. Death was man's best friend. When man could endure life no longer, death came and set him free. It reminds me of how diversely death is viewed in different cultures and across different points of time. The impartial friend. Death, the only immortal who treats us all alike, whose pity and whose peace and whose refuge are for all, the soiled and the pure, the rich and the poor, the loved and the unloved. So, what's the point of all of this? This doesn't exactly magically get rid of the fear of death. Although part of the episode, I don't think it's actually the main takeaway. There's a key message in this episode, a message that was given to the old lady, but meant for the viewers as well. Living is more than surviving. Choose to live, to experience. Don't stop living your life just to survive, because no one can survive forever, because no one lives forever. Nothing in the Dark ranks number 7 on IMDb's list of all 156 episodes, which is pretty high in all honesty. It's also no stranger to being on other best or favorite Twilight Zone episode lists. Although I tend to see it on people's rankings, I find that I don't really hear much about it overall, which is actually quite shocking. During the 2014 Santa Barbara International Film Festival, Robert Redford said he has been told by the production company of The Twilight Zone that it is the most often viewed episode. Who's to say if this is still true today, or really what he actually meant by most often viewed, since it wasn't really elaborated further from that. However, I don't think the specifics are that important. Although I don't really hear of Nothing in the Dark referred to as often, especially compared to other Twilight Zone episodes, such as Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, Eye of the Beholder, or The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, for example, I think it makes sense. It almost feels natural that way, at least in a rather bittersweet, poetic sense, much like the episode itself. 'Cause you see, this episode might not contain a scary killer doll, or maniacal puppet, or aliens wanting to eat humans, or any other sort of monster. In fact, there really isn't anything scary in this episode at all. Yes, we're shown a woman who, admittedly, is frightened almost the entire story, but by the end, just like her, we're shown there isn't anything to fear. This is a story of an old woman who hides away in fear of death coming to take her life away. Except, death isn't the scary monster she assumed it would be. He isn't evil. He isn't even unkind. For most of the story, he spends time with her, so she isn't scared. and in the end, they walk away together, much like old friends. Now, I ask you, do you fear the Reaper? If you made it to the end of this video, I just want to take a moment to thank you. It means a great deal to me that anyone would give any of their time to watch and listen. If you enjoyed the video, please give a like or comment, and if you want to see more videos like this, I'd greatly appreciate it if you'd subscribe to this channel. Let me know your thoughts about this Twilight Zone episode and if there's any other episodes you would like me to cover. Thank you for venturing with me into the world of horror. Farewell and safe departures, my little ghouls.